Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, everyone.
Go ahead, Bob.
What, dude? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 14th, 2014 version of Another Perspective, starring the not quite here yet Dr. Wil Spencer. And with me right now is the rumble of his not-so-humble court jester of Juju, Grainy Ghetto Grouchmeister, Grim Reaper of Groceries, Cunning Linguist, Caustic Gnostic, 41-foot Roundworm Wrangler. Patrick, don't you dare ask me what ICD 999 means. I'm taking notes, man. Jordan. Are you there, Patrick?
I can barely hear you. Doctor, no.
Barely. And plus, we got a good lag going on. This should be an interesting show, stepping on each other.
Let me explain something, guys.
Back to the Air Force days of...
Let me explain something. This is all Skype, because I'm hearing you guys right now, clear, clean as can be. The delays you're hearing are caused by Skype. The boys in the Fusion Center don't have anything better to do, so they're picking on poor little old Wolf Spirit Radio.
Oh,
that means you're
nice. I don't care if it's being caused by a fucking worn out, worn out fishing line between the tin cans. We still got to deal with it. Okay, so where are we? Oh, let us not forget that Wolf Spirit Radio is entirely listener-supported, so come on over to wolfspiritradio.com, find a donate button, click it like you have Tourette's, and join in to perhaps get some new fishing line for the tin cans. You can also support Wolf Spirit Radio by subscribing to our archives for $5 a month and have access to all the programs recorded here on Wolf Spirit Radio all the time. And believe it or not, we do have listeners that we usually refer to in some sort of masochistic parlance who do listen to the shows more than once. As always, we welcome your calls. If you would like to use the Ma Bellway, the call-in number is 702-879-4770, or Skype your way in on wolfspirit.switchboard, the number 1. That's Wolfspirit Switchboard 1. And basically that takes care of the administrative portion, or the PBS portion of our show. Apparently, we still don't have our lusterless leader back.
Although I would like to add something.
Somewhere in the hills of West Virginia.
I would like to add something.
What?
This month we are desperately...
Have at it.
This month we are desperately short of donations. We had to buy another computer, and it's just really put a hurting on us. So if you folks can make an extra donation, I would deeply appreciate it. With that note, I'm going to mute my mics and sit here and listen. Wilbur, are you here?
I'm back now. Can you all hear me?
Loud and clear here.
Syllable.
Yes, it is his...
Bill,
it is his
talk
eminence,
for
Chief
a
Lord,
little
Dr.
time to see if we can hear you and see what the delay is like.
He's gone, and the delay is bad.
Yeah, delay's bad.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Is Patrick still here?
Patrick's still there.
I'm still here. I was just waiting because I didn't want to stomp on you.
I'm going to drop out. Yeah, that's what's going on. You two keep chatting. I'm gonna drop out, reboot, and I'll reconnect. So we'll do it one at a time. This way we don't have any dead air.
Okay.
Be back in a bit.
I'm calling Will's cell phone right now.
Hello.
Can you hear him, Patrick?
Hello.
Will, can you
Is this
hear?
any better? Say a few syllables, Will. Talk for an extended period of time.
Tonight I'm having a difficult time. Technology-wise. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, I hear
Little
you.
green Martian men.
I hear you,
Yeah,
Will.
it's much better than it was before.
Is this any better?
Much better.
Really? Okay. How about
Can you
Bob
hear
and
us?
Pat?
Tell
Are
us
you
if
guys
you can
there?
hear us.
Well, Bob is going to reboot his
I
computer.
can hear Patrick very little bit. Just gotta love this.
Well, believe me.
Can we rename this the Three Stooges Show?
Hello.
Will, believe me, it is not the connection. It is Skype itself that's being screwed with. They can all hear you out there in the audience.
Okay, how's this?
That's good.
That's amazing because the delay is just so incredible. Beyond that, the distortion from the delay is, rendered these guys practically unintelligible.
Want me to call you back, Pat?
So does that mean, Patrick, you can't hear me?
Well, see, you sound like you're in some kind of vocoder for who's that female vocalist? Cher. Remember Sonny and Cher when she went off on her own? She'd sing through that synthesizer. That's what you sound like. And Bob was just I couldn't hear a word he was saying.
Maybe Dave needs to reset the call again, unfortunately.
I can do that, but they can hear you fine out in the audience. So let me reset the call.
Oh, so the
That is
distortion
amazing.
is on our side.
Yeah,
So, Will, what have you done? Are you just simply on your cell phone, or are you on Skype?
he's on Skype.
That's amazing.
All right.
That's wow.
Let me-
he is.
Yeah, let me reset the call. Everybody
All
hang
right.
up and I'll call you back. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay getting this show started, but this is something that it's not unusual for this to happen. The boys at the Fusion Center don't have anything to do, so they pick on Wolf Spirit Radio.
Okay, Will made it back.
You sound great.
Hello.
You sound great, Patrick.
Oh, you sound much better.
All right, go ahead.
Are you there, Will?
Will is here.
Oh, wow, that's night and day difference, man.
Really?
Yeah. I guess
Okay.
they can only dedicate so many circuits to screwing with people at the Fusion Center that we must have used up all of their capacity.
Yeah, that's good. Someday we'll find a service much better than the CIA-run Skype system they got nowadays.
So what planet were you migrating to?
Willville.
Oh, I'm in pain, man. Don't do that. Oh, that hurts.
Looks like Dr. No is not here tonight.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. So what this indicates, I'm at least this is the way I'm going to put into my belief structure is we're talking about so many earth-shaking, paradigm-altering topics of reality that the AI just doesn't, just wants to mess with us.
Well, consider what our correspondent by email had suggested for a topic. I don't know if they want us using their name, but that topic, that's going to open up a whole can of whoop-ass. So just that being, presaged alone will let them know the direction that we're going.
Well, I say get the can opener out or the hatchet, and let's just hack away at the can.
Okay, so the topic was tattoos and piercing.
And I said might as well throw in jewelry, because jewelry come into play on this too.
Yeah. So, if you want to jump in, put on your hip waders or your chest waders, and let's go.
Well, either that or just get naked. Either one. And the email that was sent to us was one of our faithful masochistic listeners from Germany.
Oh, okay.
Actually, that's where Eddie's from. Actually, I think he's originally from like Lithuania or something. But anyhow, he's in Germany. He says, wanted to ask if you guys could talk about tattoos and piercings on the show. How's the effects of our health? Where did they come from? Why were they used? Thought that is an interesting topic, considering most people, at least the ones he hangs around, have something tattooed or pierced in one form or degree or another.
Can I tell Bible stories?
Oh, yes. Only if you use crayons.
Okay. I got my colored pencils.
Okay.
So here's the deal. If you were a slave, should I say it again? If you were a slave, they would put your earlobe to a post and pierce it with an awl, A-W-L, an awl, so that they could put a ring through it. Or they might even pierce your nose. And that was the sign of being a slave. And Will, I know your show is 2 hours. I know the topic is interesting, but that should be all anybody ever needs to hear for the rest of their lives, to put a period and closure on this topic forever.
Not if they wear their pants below their underwear line, because that fits into this topic as well.
Oh man, don't go there.
Yes.
And do you know the origins of that?
I do, and I would really love it if you would, put it in your vocabulary, because it would fit for tonight, Bob. Okay.
Get oxygen.
In my vocabulary?
Yes. So let's pipe Patrick a little air, and I'm going to sit back because I really want to hear Dr. Noah's version of this.
Why, yes. Well, you see, that was used in the penitentiary system when an inmate would like to communicate the fact that they were very much receptive to being the bottom in a participatory engagement with the same-sex population.
So by letting your pants droop down and letting your hiney stick out a little bit, that was like saying, "Hey, I'm available, Johnny. Come on over."
Well, yum, yum, give me some.
I didn't know that, and I didn't want to know that. And now that I know it, I hooked up my garden hose yesterday. Before they announced that it was going to snow and be 20 degrees, I hooked up my garden hose. So I'm going to put you guys on hold. I'm going to grab like the sprayer nozzle, and I'm just going to wash my brain out through one side of my ear, and then I'll come back, okay?
Well, if you want to keep in spirit of the conversation, why don't you wash out your cranial cavity with a rectal entry of the hose?
While holding on to your earlobe on your left side while whistling a spoonful of sugar.
I'm leaving now, man. But really, I mean, seriously, these topics are so disgusting that if they were presented in this way, then it should give any reasonable biped pause before they did any of these activities.
Well, which I kind of missed the conversation because I was still trying to connect with Skype. But what was the slave thing?
Well, where the listener wanted us to address tattoos and piercing.
Okay.
And so in the Bible stories, if you were a slave, they would put your earlobe to a wooden post and pierce it with an awl and then put a ring in it. They might even do the same to your nose. And that was the visual indication that you were a slave.
A tag. We do the same thing. We do the same thing to cattle and livestock now, don't we? We put the.
Well, I wanted to bring Will into this conversation with tell us about nose rings and bulls.
Yeah, for those that don't know, which it's not very common anymore because most people don't actually have bulls on their farms.
Right.
They have a guy, a two-legged guy that comes around that has a rubber glove that he puts all the way to his elbow, or I mean to his shoulder, and he artificially inseminates the cattle. So very few farms actually have bulls anymore.
Does he wear his pants low on his hips too?
No. Usually, at least we used to call him the rubber glove man that came to the farms in our neighborhood to do all the AIing. He usually wore a pair of coveralls, one-piece coveralls. So maybe
no Rovey.
Maybe it was for protection. Who knows? No, but really, they would put the ring in a bull's nose or in a hog in a male hog. Actually, to keep that and put a chain on it. Actually, I grew up. One of the farmers that I used to help hay, an older gentleman, he had actually like a 4-foot chain hanging on the end of the ring in the bull's nose. And I remember asking, because my dad never did that. The bulls were they would be putting in a separate pen, and it was breeding time. They would be put in with the cows. And I asked the old guy. I even remember. Don't forget. I don't remember his name off the top of my head. Mr. Hines was his name. Frank. That's what Frank Hines. Anyhow, I said, "What's that chain hanging off that bull for?" You know, I'm like 12. Okay. He says, "Oh, that's to keep the bull in line." Because a bull sometimes, when it gets aggressive, especially around the cows when they're in heat, they get kind of aggressive. And old Frank never dehorned his cattle. They all had horns. So he says when the bull comes after you, make sure you grab that chain, and he'll stop. If you don't grab the chain, he probably will, gore you a little bit, rub you into the fence or into the ground. It's actually to keep control of that big old bull. You got a 2,000 or more pound bull with that little bitty ring in his nose. You could control that bull like really easy. You grab that chain, or you just whack the chain with a stick. If he was getting too close or getting too rowdy, you just take a pitchfork or a stick or something and just whack that chain. He got all kinds of better attitude then. And hogs were the same way. So there's a little tidbit from the farm, the way it used to be.
That's the disconnect, man. That's why I needed you to share that story, because nobody knows these stories, man. They don't know the history. And they're walking around with nose rings and rings in their lips and rings in their belly button. And I'm going to talk, later about what kind of meridian disruption that is. But just the physicality of it is. That's a sign of a slave. That's a sign of a herd animal. And people are proudly displaying it, thinking it's attractive or makes a statement or is a form of rebellion. It's like you're advertising you're a freaking slave.
I have another story. This is family history. This goes back to the 1800s, before Abraham Lincoln was president in Missouri. I had family members that actually imported literally hundreds of black people from the Louisiana coast and the Georgia coast to Missouri. And I saw the house, outside of the old farmhouse, the main farmhouse had these big rings that were concreted into the house, like you would see in a barn where you would tie the horse or the cow into the stall. And I asked I said, what are those rings all around the house for? They're in the brick house. Oh, he says, that's when a slave tried to run away or was naughty or they caught him trying to have sex when they're not supposed to. They beat them within an inch of their life, and then they would have these chains. They put them around their neck or their nose or their ear or they would attach the chains somehow to their body, and then they would attach them to these rings on the house, and every day they got beat right before they got fed. So this is, prior to Abraham Lincoln, like the early 1800s. This went on for I don't even know how long. I know Richard, it's a family member, he imported literally several thousand black people up into Missouri and built the north central part of the state all the way over towards St. Louis, all with this slave labor that he brought there.
Well, it's interesting, at least from my perspective, the things that I studied. The pirates of the Caribbean, they were actually the Knights Templar. That's what the whole skull and crossbones thing came from. When the Knights Templar were quote unquote extincted, they weren't really extincted. They beat a path up through Europe, and they actually became the Pirates of the Caribbean. And that was actually a part of their disguise, was that pirates were all either slaves that had escaped, or they were convicts or whatever. And that was the thing of wearing the big hoop earring. It was like literally a part of their disguise, disguising themselves as prisoners or escaped slaves.
Most of my study on this is the Meridian things, so I don't know a whole lot about the slave thing, just pretty much about what I shared with you. That's about it. And then the relativity to how animals are controlled with these little pieces of metal in their nose or their ear or something. So I'm learning too. I'm taking notes. I'll be like Patrick tonight because I didn't know that about the pirates. I really appreciate you sharing that, Doctor No.
Don't be like me. You'll be headed for the garden hose, man.
Those little fonts of useless information.
Except on our shows, right? Because it's relative.
Did you hear what you said, Will? See, sometimes I don't know if you do this on purpose or it just falls out of your other end. You called him the AI guy, artificial insemination. But that's not the first thing I thought of when I heard AI.
Oh, artificial intelligence? Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, and, anymore from the shows that we do, I don't see a delineation between those two concepts.
I don't either. I mean, these memes, if you want, let's just what do you want to call it? Hop down this little bunny trail, because the memes that people get put into their head, it's an artificial concept, artificial insemination, artificial intelligence. It's artificially put into your intelligence. It's kind of like artificially inseminated with a meme that turns into a virus, that turns into controlling your life, and you are running now totally unconscious, subconsciously, and people just think it's normal.
Or it could stand for anally injected if we go back to the droopy pants meme.
Very good point. See, that's why what rounds this whole show out is the perspectives that we have here from 3 different places. That's perfect. Really? I would really want to hear. I mean, for my fancy is, okay, the tattoo thing. We'll save the piercing thing for later, because I know I want to say some things. I know Patrick's over there chomping at the bit or his nose ring to get going on that. But I want to know about the tattoos. Do you guys know? Because, I have sat in tattoo parlors. I have friends and clients that do tattoos professionally. They've been doing it for years. And, I sit there and I'm looking through all this cool stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I want to I don't have any tattoos. Never have. I've always kind of liked them. And I'm always thinking, I don't think that's beet juice in there that I would want to put in my body. That's got to be like coal tar. I looked at some of the bottles, and a friend of mine out in Colorado in his studio where he does tattooing, it doesn't appear that it's very natural, those dyes. So I'll just sit back here and I'm going to take notes now. Maybe you guys can help me and understand a little better, but it can't be that good for you.
Well, do you want to talk about the I can't really speak on the chemistry. I can speak on the origins and some of the meaning and some of the purpose. If you want to start there.
You know, I mean, when I was younger, I was 18. I was in jail for a while. My entrepreneurial spirit got the best of me, and I ended up, incarcerated. And I watched a couple of fellas with this little needle and ink out of an ink pen, and they were giving each other tattoos. Now, there was no way that I was going to want ink drilled into my skin with this dull needle. And they were sharing this needle, by the way. When you're an inmate, you don't have access to alcohol or any other cleansing stuff. And if they did, like the cleaning supplies, most of those guys were drinking it anyhow. But they were using a needle, and they were poking this ink into their skin. I mean, literal blue and black pen ink. That can't be good.
Use a sewing needle or a straight pin pushed in the tip of a pencil eraser, and then you wrap it with thread down to the tip to hold the ink, and then you ink it with whatever particular dye substance you have available, and there is your needle for a prison tat.
That's what they were doing. And they spent hours doing it. And it's just, in my brain, it just doesn't compute. Okay, so let's just say we have a skin over our entire body, the largest organ in our body. It is a protection mechanism. It's loaded with microorganisms, and it has a purpose. And now we're permeating the outside of our body with little holes, and we're pushing ink in there. It just, the whole concept just kind of makes me crawl. I love looking at the artwork. I mean, I appreciate art. And some of the tattoos, I love asking people, what were you thinking when you got that? Because I would never put that on my body. And just that part of the tattoo part is kind of neat for me. But the whole idea of using needles, and then you are perforating your skin, and all these different inks are being put in there. And it's like, just that concept just keeps me from getting a tattoo.
Disclaimer here, ladies and gentlemen, the only reason that Dr. Spencer gave us that little, shall we say, positive blurb on tattoos is because one of the three of us actually has quite a few of them. I will leave it to your own discretion to figure out which one.
Patrick, fess up, okay?
Exactly.
How many tattoos do you have, Patrick?
I'm not going to show you the butterfly on my bum.
Oh, come on.
Project Monarch, that explains a lot.
Right.
Project Caterpillar.
Oh, man. The worm.
There's just something very poetic about having a monarch tattooed on the cheek of your butt, considering it's where the butterflies.
Who says it was that cheek, Dr. No? What if it was his top cheek?
Oh, wow.
No, that would be tears for all the boll weevils that he burnt with his torch.
Wow.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
That would be fun. I haven't burnt me a boll weevil yet. I'm going to hunt them.
You got to go to Alabama or Texas or something where they raise cotton. They don't have much cotton.
Actually, we have weevils out here. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily cotton boll weevils, but we got weevils, and they will cause some serious damage. As will I. So thanks for the tip. But let's keep focused here. What happens is when you apply ink into a wound, it gets into what's called the basement membrane cells. These are the cells from which all other cells arise. And it's always fascinated me that nobody that I know of ever developed any kind of cancer from these toxins that are actually poisoning the cells, the progenitor cells that give you all the rest of your skin. That just fascinates me. I don't know that they have any overt health problems, because most people I know that have tattoos take drugs and drink alcohol and smoke cigarettes, and their health pretty much sucked before they got the tattoos. So, how do you gauge a change in something like that? But when you get that tattoo, you're actually poisoning the very layer of skin that gives rise to all other skin.
Well, I remember my friend saying that the skin actually, you put the dye or whatever, the ink, into the skin with the needle, and actually the skin will then produce the same color if it takes it right. He calls it, if the skin takes the color correctly, the skin will then produce that particular color. So that's like almost like genetic engineering in a way. Because that cells that make that skin up, they will replace themselves, but they will replace themselves to that color that was put there.
That's interesting. I never really heard that before.
And just to throw yet another damper on using ink from a pen, when ballpoint pens were invented, this is the legend that I heard. It was for use in spacecraft, and they had to make sure that if the pens got cold, that they could still write. So they put literally car antifreeze in them. And I can smell it in some of the really low quality inks. You can smell ethylene glycol in the ink. And of course, it's hard to say at what dose, but it's a kidney killer.
It's a lot of thing killer, or it's a preservative.
That's one of my favorite things. It recently just made a round too on one of the social media things. When they were having problems with the pens freezing and not writing in zero gravity, NASA spent like $10 million inventing the pressurized space pen, and the Soviets just used pencils.
Right.
Yeah, good old-fashioned pencils. And there again, we go from lead to graphite. I've heard of people now, like the Maori culture in New Zealand, where they did these with the big tribal tattoos. They would actually put things like graphite or coal and use this big honkin' sharp metal and force it in like a big chisel almost, like you would like a bone chisel, and they would force the whatever they're tattooing black with under the skin like that. It was a whole. I mean, the guy was in pain. The guy doing the tattooing had this like 2 feet long, with this little chisel, very sharp, and he was chiseling, loosening the skin up with this chisel, and it was at the same time was forcing this, whatever this black substance was, into the skin.
Okay, well, since you went there, I'll go here. Because, like I said, I'm not going to speak on the chemistry or the biology of it, but this speaks to Patrick's bizarro world. The thing that we hear nowadays is, my body is a canvas, and I pick out these pictures or I draw these pictures, and I have these pictures applied to my body, and blah 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 blah. Okay, now let's speak of the origin of the tattoos. The origin of a tattoo among tribal culture had to do with your first initiation. And basically speaking, the tattooing was done by shaman. And the original instruments were a bone spike, basically, and another piece of bone to use as a mallet. And an initiation to the tribal culture that we're talking about here, we're talking about the Aboriginals, the shaman, the pagan Gnostics, whatever you want to call them, the matriarchal cultures. Your first initiation was to bring out in you the closest ego manifestation of your super ego, if you want to call it your higher self or whatever. It was for you to identify what part of your personality was most prevalent and most closely matched your super conscience. The shaman, tattoo artist in these particular instances, of course, had the knowledge of what this was in you, and the ritual was designed to give you this knowledge. Okay. Upon successful completion, you were tattooed not with what you wanted. You were tattooed with what was within you trying to be let out. Okay, so that was the beginning of it, and there were the tribal tattoos were all, as you know, you see the thing now, the black ink thing. All the ink was black. There was no color done, and the marks were actually marks that were designed to indicate things, not just the membership of a tribe, but also, as I said, whatever inner spirit in you was trapped in your meat suit. So it was literally the complete and total opposite of what we recognize the process and the reason for the process to be done nowadays. So, when we start talking about the disruption of your energy meridians, yes, if you take something, I don't care what it is, if it's a piercing, if it's a tattoo, if it's whatever, and you just put it someplace on your body and you have somebody drill it into you, staple it into you, needle it into you, I don't care how it's put into you, you're upsetting the energy meridians of your body. Okay? This is quite simply the opposite of what the original practice was, and what the original practice was to help align the energy meridians of your body to what your meat suit wasn't up to doing at that point in time.
This is an interesting line of thought, because the black ink, I don't know what the chemistry might have been doped with perhaps a ferromagnetic material, because what you're talking about is, even on like the dollar bill and checks and other things where they use magnetic inks, you can create a radionic antenna with these things. You can summon energies. The shapes we know from cymatics, the science. Let's bring this from the land of woo into the land of physics. Cymatics, sound has shape, complex shapes. They can be imaged in different kind of non-Newtonian media. They can actually do it in sand. They can do it in water. So if a shape that might have a electromagnetic affinity is put on a body, that would then draw in the energy that had that shape.
Which actually makes sense, because from just about everything I know and have read and been told, the original creation of all of the dyes used in traditional tattooing was mineral based.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people they like to show in the movies and in popular culture in the old tribal movies that they used berries and this and that and whatever, and there was a certain amount of it actually used for some of the color process and things like that, but the actual bases of the inks were like charcoal, mineral base, certain, like Will said, certain rocks, ground up and pulverized and things like that. But basically speaking, yeah, there was definitely a mineral bias to the construction of the dye.
So there's no telling where these conversations go because, we jump around from topic to topic to topic, and you can't predict it. I would never have predicted that at this point in the conversation I would bring up the flag of Israel, which of course is the Star of David, which of course is the seal of Solomon, who happened to be one of the most prominent demon summoners of that time. In fact, he actually compiled a grimoire that had the summoning names and secret names of all demons with their powers and attributes and supposed weaknesses.
He had two grimoires.
Oh.
The greater and the lesser.
Greater and the lesser. There you go. And what we find is that the Amish consider that star sign, six-pointed star sign, a hex symbol. So you can either use the hex as they do as a repellent when they put hex symbols on their barns to keep people away, or you can use it as a summoning agent. And so here we go again, all the way full circle from tattoos to symbols, sigils, S-I-G-I-L-S, and how the hexagonal shape, we're talking snowflakes. We're talking the carbon ring, the benzene ring, the cyclo ring, if it doesn't have double bonds. We're talking elementary particle physics here. We're talking resonances. We're talking, thou shalt not make graven images. Why? Because they have freaking power, man.
Well, it's the two-dimensional, the what you call the Star of David is the flattened two-dimensional representation of the tetrahedron, which is the geometrical form that the carbon atom takes because of its 6 proton, 6 neutron, 6 electron construction. It's the shape that's inside every sphere as the nodal points of the energy that bounces around inside the container of the sphere. What most people don't realize is that all of the sigils that we see and the seals that we see are two-dimensional representations that fall under what we loosely call sacred geometry. And the fact of the matter is that the entire energetic universe is just that, and Patrick hit on it before, is cymatics. Every frequency has a geometry to it. And in certain media, you can get a visual indication of that geometry. Certain geometries are invisible, like the geometry of a lot of the electromagnetic spectrum is invisible. The atoms we know now due to quantum physics, there are no particles in an atom no matter what they say. That's why things like CERN crack me up when they go looking for these particles, because there are no particles. They're just geometric representations of very specific frequencies. And so that's what we have when we have the quote-unquote Star of David. And, Solomon wrote it down as a sigil. But basically what it is, it's a representation of a complex group of interrelated frequencies. And we all know, whether it's through, esoteric means in ancient cultures or through what we want to call modern science, that everything that corpusculates in this 3-dimensional world that we live in, or 4 dimensions if you want to put it that way, is merely nothing more than the condensation of specific energy frequencies. And
keep going.
That's the world that we live in and that we sense is the geometric corpusculation of a bunch of interacting specific frequencies.
So either they're harmonic or they're not, though, right? Either they're beneficial or they're not.
Well, you can't say beneficial. What we will say is they're either sympathetic, or which would be harmonic, or they're non-sympathetic, which means that their frequencies are expressed in some sort of mathematical proportion in which they build on each other, or they're expressed in a mathematical proportion that negate and destroy each other, like, a noise-canceling headset. What does a noise-canceling headset do? It's got a little microphone that listens to the world around you, and it just creates the exact same frequency that you're being pelted with the exact opposite frequency, thus canceling out any noise. You can do that with any frequency whatsoever, and the frequency spectrum is infinite. We have the visible light frequency that we know of, and then we have infrared, and then we have ultraviolet. But the fact remains is that it is an infinite spectrum. It's got a beginning, but it's got no end. It's infinite in one direction.
And so we can just add a little tidbit. That's what Rife was doing when he figured out how to stop pathogens and parasites from existing in the body. It was all based on this theory that we just talked about.
That's how your hand scanner works.
Exactly.
Your hand scanner identifies the presence of a frequency. It makes a relative proportion calculation based on, other frequencies around it, and then it identifies a solid corpuscular material that exists in our reality that is a counter frequency to that.
That's it right there. It's actually called communication in some realms.
Well, it's how your cells communicate.
Yep.
Because names escape me so well. Help me out here, Will, so I don't have to crane my head. Okay. Bruce Lipton.
Yeah, okay.
Bruce Lipton.
Yep, Bruce Lipton.
Bruce Lipton's research. I craned my head. Bruce Lipton's research says, and I'm too lazy to look up the quote, so I'm going to paraphrase it. The cellular membrane is a printed microcircuit. It is not analogous to a printed microcircuit. It's not like a printed microcircuit. It's not a simile to a printed microcircuit. It literally is a printed circuit. Okay? And it is an antenna. And in your nervous system, there are two forms of electromagnetic communication that happen. They originate with the heart, not the brain. Okay? One originates with the heart, rather. The other originates with the brain. The end-to-end serial electrical transmission through your nervous system from your senses to your brain is one communication. There is another communication that happens, and that happens through the myelin sheath of your nervous system. That sheath is a capacitor, okay, and it discharges annularly around, okay. That is how your cells communicate with each other, and they communicate faster and more constantly than your actual central nervous system communicates back and forth to your brain. And that is the difference between your enteric nervous system, which is your, if you want to call it, your base or reptilial nervous system, which I think is pretty much an insult because it's the one that works. And then you have your intellectual or ego or central nervous system, which to me is the booger that gets us all in trouble. So when they say trust your heart, they literally mean trust your heart, because your heart is the greatest source of electromagnetic radiation in your body, far more powerful than your brain is.
Yeah, but then, see, this is the myelin sheath is actually part of the electrical system, where the nerve, the actual tangible nerve inside, the myelin sheath is part of the nervous system, and there's a speed difference. We're talking speed of communication through the nerves is actually extremely slow, where the electrical system through the myelin sheath is extremely fast. The myelin sheath operates with the speed of light, literally. The nervous system operates, and I forget the analogy, but the speed is slower. It's more like the speed of sound rather than the speed of light. It's a lot different.
That is literally correct, because the inside of your nervous system is electrons and the outside of your nervous system is photons.
Right. And I had it explained to me that, and here, you can go check this out. I'll give you some references. This is Dawson Church in his book Genie of Your Genes, or Genie in Your Genes. And then The Rainbow and the Worm, she talks about it in there also. Those are just two quick references. Both of those two information avenues concur that our electrical system is like a high-speed internet connection coupled with a electrical magnetic generator, piezoelectric system. So that's why acupressure and acupuncture work so well. It actually creates energy. That's why chewing is so important, because every tooth is a piezoelectric generator to create electricity to pump it into your system. So it's a multiple faceted concept here with the electrical system. Just adding a little tidbits here. Hopefully it helps.
And to tie this back more with science, and once again, I'm just too lazy to look her up, but feel free to, that psycho broad that used to be the head of DARPA, who is now the head of Google Research and Development, actually has a tattoo on her forearm. The process is FDA approved, and it is a printed circuit board that is printed on her body, and it receives power from a potassium-based capsule that she takes every morning, and it is literally the smart chip that is embedded in your credit card or an RFID, and it can be programmed through radio frequency to hold anything. So, like, instead of swiping her credit card when she goes through the self-checkout line, because I'm sure at her minuscule salary every penny counts, all she's got to do is jam her arm in that little slot.
I just love how these shows go from tribal tattoos and King Solomon to the technology where the nanochips, because we can go from now that gal, the Google gal, that has the chips, tattooed on her and taking the potassium pill, to one step further to people giving off radio transmissions because these little chips, components, have been put into their body somehow and then built inside with these little bitty things called pathogens, hijacking them, the chip, through the pathogen to your nervous system. Just like a planter's wart has its roots from the wart all the way up for several inches in and tied into the central nervous system.
Well, it gets even funnier than that. There's basically an extension of the tattoo culture that do body implants, and the dude that used to be the ex-head of the Church of Satan, the theatrical head of Satan, Anton LaVey's deal, he has horns embedded in his forehead. And there is a subculture of these body mutilation experts that do all kinds of things. You can get little spiky things put in the back of your neck like a dinosaur has. And there's a video on YouTube, it was very viral, that this kid invented or constructed a simple electronic device, and it was fairly huge. I mean, the thing was about 2 inches around, and he had one of these guys embedded in his skin, and I think it did something like dopey, like kept his pulse or something like that. It was just a matter of the subculture there trying to make a biomechanical or electronic body implant. I mean, you know, the whole boy, my brain vocabulary connection is terrible today.
Basically, they were trying to make it okay that this kind of technology even exists.
Right, the homegrown Ray Kurzweil deal.
There you go. Yeah, that's pretty
I can't think of the term of it. I keep thinking eugenics, but we're not talking about eugenics here. We're talking about transhumanism.
There you go. Transhumanism, yeah.
You're not being much of a help today with my vocabulary issues, Will.
It's okay.
So we have the homegrown subculture of transhumanism, and this guy puts a 2-inch lump basically in his arm, surgically implanted here. Okay? And the only reason I bring this up is because, once again, it's like the old 70s red LED watches versus, you know, a watch nowadays and the memory power. I mean, this lady's on Google with a tattoo that probably has 1,000 million times more processing power than the hockey puck that this kid just had surgically implanted in his arm that does nothing but transmit, like, his pulse.
Yeah, the technology nowadays is so small, nano, and even smaller, that actually hooks your systems, plural, so your iPhone can pick everything up inside of you and transmit it through your phone, or even through these new Samsung watches now that have the whole computer and phone and everything on your watch. So it's around your wrist, catching the meridians, reading everything. You don't even have it's all in real time. I mean, to me, that's insane. Just throwing that out there, because your body, when it operates, when all of its systems are functioning the way it's supposed to, the natural chelation systems, and the body will decontaminate itself, because this stuff is all foreign material. This technology falls into that 95% of your DNA that they don't know about, they say is junk. Well, folks, it's not junk, and it's being manipulated, and so are you.
That's why they're telling you it's junk, because they know what it's for and they're messing with it.
Exactly.
So I got some figures for you, Will.
Oh, go ahead, figure away.
It's out of one of my newest books, the first one on food, called Operator's Manual for the Human Body. The speed of pain is 350 feet per second. So I ran the numbers, and that's about 24 miles an hour.
That's in the nervous system, right?
Yep, speed of pain.
The speed of pain is 24 miles an hour when the other system operates at, how fast is the speed of light? I mean, it's like a lot faster than 24 miles per hour.
Does that explain why I high-sided a motorcycle at 140 miles an hour and shook it off and walked away, but I fell over one time in a driveway and broke my ankle?
You were going too slow in the driveway, that's why.
It's all about the slide, man.
See how the synergy of us three. I had an email the other day thanking. I mean, this person was elated and listens multiple times to every one of our shows because of our different viewpoints that we bring together to make this conversation so powerful. So, I'm saying,
I try to make it practical. That's why I had you bring up the bowls. Those bowls can be controlled by, a 2,000-pound animal can be controlled by a ring in its nose, whether it has horns or not. And that's a topic that we have to revisit again. But the funniest thing that I just read recently is that the fastest human being can run maybe about like 23 miles an hour, but a bear can run 30 miles an hour.
Well, that's the old hunter joke. The guys, two buddies walking down the trail, and they come around the corner, and they're smack dab in front of them is a grizzly bear who rears up, and the one guy turns around and starts running, and his buddy's like, "Hey, don't run, you can't outrun a bear," and he turns around and says, "I don't have to outrun the bear." It's got to outrun you.
Yeah, he can't eat and run at the same time, can he?
Practical advice. That's what we're all about.
That's right.
Well,
Jeff.
you know, the funniest thing I heard in the last 3 seconds was, I try to keep it practical. That's why I brought up the nose ring in the bull. Yes, folks, in case you're having a problem with your pesky pet bull, could it be perhaps because you haven't thought to put a nose ring in it yet? Practical advice for those of us whose lives are being disrupted by that bull who just won't be trained.
Or child.
So easy on me. We're coming up. So somebody wake up. Somebody wake up, Dave.
And in the second half of the hour, we'll give you some more practical advice on how to tattoo the annoying, possessed people in your life to help release their inner demons.
Oh, so you guys are going to want to come back after the break. So, and I'm pretty sure Dave is ready to push the break button. So,
And everyone, welcome back to another perspective, the usually hijacked show of Dr. Wil Wonka Spencer with your, I don't know, couple of year running guest now, or guest host, Bob. And the, don't know if he's back yet, Patrick Jordan.
I'm here.
Oh, you're there. Welcome back, Patrick.
Why, thank you.
World famous, renowned author. And while Will's not here, let's plug your website. www.vaccinefraud.com is where you can find all of Patrick's voluminous volumes of literature, along with links to his softer, right-brained artwork.
Oh, interesting.
and very nice artwork, by the way. I have actually some of his tiles that work really good to throw at people as they try to trespass through the door. And believe me, they are nice, solid tiles.
Art shurikens.
I like that. That's right up there with an apple a day keeps the doctor away, or anybody for that matter, if you throw them hard enough.
So are you ready, Will? Because you wanted to bring energetics into this.
I am so ready. I mean, unbelievable.
Can we take just one step back and do a little history? Because I can't leave the bowls alone. I just can't do it.
Let's do it, because let's just tie the second hour into the first hour, and then just have like we normally do.
In the first part of the hour, he had to go outside and jam a hose up his ass to clean out his cranial cavity, and in the second half of the hour, he can't leave his bowls alone. I'm telling you.
Bowls. B-U-L-L-S.
See, Doctor, no. I mean, did you get that? There's a U in there, not any other, U.
It's them city
Oh,
slickers.
I can assure you there is no U in Patrick's balls.
Go ahead, Patrick. I gotta mute myself.
Thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome.
leaving. So, Will, what I wanted you to do is talk about the fact that cows have horns, bulls have horns, but for the convenience of the people that raise them, they have been surgically removed.
I don't know if you would call that surgically, because we used to have a dehorner that was like a miniature guillotine. Literally, it was had over 3 foot long handles, and it was a work. It was no surgery involved. This was sheer archaic pain.
Yeah. For who?
For the cow. Well, for me as a kid, trying to manipulate this tool was difficult, because you had to chain the head of the cow down in the chute, and then put this heavy piece of metal shear onto the horn, and then you squeezed it. That was one of the ways. But there was a couple of different ways. But yeah, go ahead. It's really not as surgical as you would want it to, want everyone to believe.
So yeah, that's why we have a good rapport here, because I make a statement and then you go, you're full of shit, man. So, and I do it on purpose because I know it's a bloody operation and it is painful to the animal. And most farmers I know didn't give a shit. You know, whack them horns, they'll heal. And it was for convenience and protection of the farmer because, you know, you got a cow or a steer that's pushing the size and weight of a motor vehicle. You don't want them coming at you with a lethal weapon.
I got a story. Can I just add to the realism here?
As long as it's a practical tip about helping everyone with their livestock issues.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So when my father, he never dehorned many of the cattle. About half of them he dehorned. Some of them he didn't. Okay, and he kept them. He liked to keep them kind of wild. They were healthier that way. They would fend for themselves. So we had this group of cows every spring, and I'm hearing quite a bit of feedback in my mic, in my headphone, just so whoever knows that. Some of these cows would jump the fence and go into the swamp and have their calf. So it was our job to go into the swamp, grab the calf, and get it back up into the yard because my dad liked to calve in the middle, you know, in late winter. He'd rather have frostbitten ears and tails rather than flies when it got warmer.
Oh, wow.
So anyhow, yeah, that's a whole other story. But anyhow, I remember being in the back of the pickup, and I'm talking a 3/4-ton four-wheel drive pickup. We're in the swamp. I'm in the truck because I was younger, and the older guys working on the farm would grab the calf, run to the truck, throw the calf in the back of the truck, and then we would climb in and we'd drive along looking for another calf. Well, meanwhile, a mama cow, when you take a calf away, is not very friendly anymore. Actually, they're quite protective. And one time, there was 3 or 4 cows that had calved one night in the swamp. And mind you, my father had over 850 cows. So it was a lot of them. And so one day, I remember this so vivid. I'm in the back of the truck with these couple calves. I'm holding the calves down, and they're bellowing away because their mothers they got taken away from their mom. These mama cows ended up, they busted the grill, the headlights, they dented all the fenders, they busted the mirrors off the door, broke the windows, totally destroyed the taillights in a matter of like just a few minutes because their calves were in the back of the truck. This is the instincts in some of these animals when they're allowed to have them. So
I saw that on Jurassic Park when they had the little baby T-Rex.
Exactly. It was kind of like that, yes. Yeah. So that's just a little practical story here to kind of bring it into reality for people. So go ahead, Patrick.
I'm deadly serious here. This is why I'm bringing it up. This is why we do the hayseed farm town stories stuff, because nobody understands these basic natural principles. You steal the child from a mother, the mother should open up a can of whoop-ass. Well, what's happened? In human bipeds, they have dehorned them, which is an analogy for taking their power away. They have put rings in their nose, literally and figuratively, and they have been turned into kept animals that are fully controllable. That's why I'm bringing these topics up.
Well, it ties right into the energetics because every girl that I know, for the most part, that they have rings on their fingers and they have holes in their earlobes, and this all leads to energetic castration.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, on the Chinese charts, the Oriental acupuncture charts of the ears, the earlobe is actually representation of what happens in the head and the endocrine system. And what do they do with little babies nowadays even? They punch a hole in there and they put an antenna in it. And then when they get old enough to start having their own children, most of people nowadays, they get a ring on their finger. Okay, the ring finger is actually the triple warmer or triple heater meridian, which controls the thyroid and the endocrine system. You want to know why women are having thyroid problems to beat the band right now? There's a lot of contributing factors, but part of my contributing factor is it's that band around the finger and the holes in the ears are very contributing factors to basically dead shorting your circuitry for the endocrine system.
I will give you another more insidious thing if you're unaware of as far as energy meridians go. The stimulation of the ear, especially from the earlobe up around the outer shell, is for sedation. It is actually, it's been done for drug treatment. It's been done. Dr. Meg Patterson pioneered it back in the 60s with her electromagnetic ear stimulation thing to help famous rock stars, Eric Clapton being one of them, beat their addictions. But even nowadays, if you have stress or anxiety, or if you're trying to quit smoking or have any addiction that causes anxiety, there's a particular pattern of 4 spots around the circumference of the ear that are stimulated, and it is actually an electromagnetic sedation.
Like castration.
Which brings us back to Patrick's bowls and dehorning, and I'm trying to get off of that whole giving me a pain in the groin edge that the conversation has.
Well, Patrick's going to have to step up to his bulls and you let them out of the pasture then.
I'm about one more Jordanism away from getting up and finding a cup.
A cup?
And I'm not talking about one for my coffee.
I'm laughing, but I don't know why. So, okay.
Sometimes you just have to laugh because you can't believe where these conversations go.
Yeah.
We can thank Eddie for this one, okay? So
yeah.
Thanks, Eddie.
So let's get to the nose ring. Going through a major meridian. Acting like a ring on the finger. So we're just talking a ring on the fingers on the outside of the body. Acting as what's called a Hertzian antenna. So it's a radio frequency receiver. So we are flooded. You know, they advertise this AM or FM station is broadcasting at 50,000 watts. That's 50,000 watts of radio frequency power that's penetrating everything, man. And the entire globe is just like bristling with this electromagnetic pollution. And people are wearing antennas in and on their bodies. And once you start penetrating the body, you're getting into the nervous system by penetrating the nerve and the sheath. And these 2 different communication pathways that you guys brought up in the first hour now have direct access through this Hertzian antenna, whether it's rings that go up the outside perimeter of your ear, in your nose, in your belly button. That is a major control meridian right up and down the front and back of your body.
It's called your central meridian that runs up the front side of your body, up to your bottom lip, basically. And from your top lip, up the middle of your nose, up your forehead, and down your spine is your governing meridian. And electrically, anytime you distort your central meridian, you're shorting out a lot of stuff. But you'll just notice that a lot of these popular piercings are in these strategic areas that are specifically on meridians or on points that will bring disharmony or dis-ease down later in life.
That's exactly my point, man. They've had thousands of years to perfect this kind of military attack, And so it is not only marking the slaves, it's putting a control mechanism in the slave.
Is that like kind of putting your own signature on something? So then
Wow.
you can then, well, it's like patenting something, and then you're going to get royalties off of the damage of the patent.
And so along those lines, I had just a few notes before the show so that I could keep this all with some kind of semblance of order. Beyond all of this, the physicality of it, is the subtle inside joke of the archons of what across the world is the uniform of people in business. And I said that on purpose, uniform, because you will see sheikhs, people call them sheiks, wearing the standard Arabian headdress, but they'll be wearing a three-piece suit and tie. And I laugh my ass off every time I see that, because the tie that people put on willingly is a symbol of a noose, like you would put a leash on a farm animal or a dog. So everybody is signing to the world, signing to their controllers, the archons, the governors, that they are nothing but herd animals that have accepted and capitulated and participated in their own slavery and control.
And the funny part about it is, because I have heard this argument time and time again. I hear it more as I get older. We talk about the origins of the symbols, and people argue with me that, well, we don't live 2,000 years ago. Okay, you don't live 2,000 years ago. But I can tell you something. My own personal experience, having gone to a college, an institute of higher education that was primarily funded by IBM. The internship program was like everybody's goal. I lasted 4 days. Okay, the entire concept of a tie, okay, and I know people that experience this, it's not just me. Your physiological reaction to a tie is exactly what you just said. It's a noose. It's a rope around your neck. Okay, we won't even get into the tactical disadvantages in the practical survival arena. Okay?
I love it, man.
It's a fucking leash. Okay? I don't care if Jerry Garcia hand painted it. Okay? It's what it is, and it's what it feels like. Okay, and I have been through, the ranks of corporate America, if you want to call it that, to these guys that it's like it's their arena. Like, when I put on a suit and, when I do the sharp dressed man thing, it's like my suit of armor and this and that. And it's like, yeah, well, I can understand that. I mean, like, I'm sure that the gladiators in Rome kind of felt reassured when they finally got their hands on a sword. But isn't that kind of a little narrow scope of focus there? It's basically speaking, you're a slave in a suit of armor.
Wow.
I mean, because you're still wearing a leash. I mean, I don't even give it the grandeur of a noose. Okay, because once you got a noose around your neck, you're going to be free relatively shortly. I consider it more a leash, and that was literally my physiological reaction to it.
It would be kind of like that chain and the ring in the bull's nose.
Yeah. I mean, so you can argue, it's like, when I was a kid, the whole thing of if you had a piercing in your right ear, you were homosexual. If you had a piercing in your left ear, you weren't. All right, man, whatever. You can assign to it whatever you want. The Nazis took a perfectly innocuous occult symbol and turned it into probably the most feared, recognizable symbol of evil, hate, and disgust that there was. So it's not like the mental associations with different things can change, but once again, that's the lesser half of your nervous system. The important part of your nervous system is the enteric nervous system. And any sort of leash that's put on me, my body responds to physiologically as if it's just that, a leash.
Most people today, though, are genetically predisposed to the leash as something positive, though.
Will, help me out again, and I don't want Bob going for that cup, whatever that meant. Aren't there cattle that have been bred to have no horns genetically?
Yeah, absolutely. There's polled Herefords, there's polled Angus, there's actually some of those characteristics bred into animals so they don't have the horns. And see, these horns, they add, and I learned this with the goats, and maybe I should keep my thought about that until we get there if you have something else, though. But yes, there are certain breeds that are bred for no horns.
Yeah, make it work. Make it, build it into your narrative. But I think it's significant because Bob was talking about, people that basically accept and revel in their slavery.
Well, look at the entire generation of feminized males that we're raising with all of the hormones put into food supply. They don't get a horn.
They can't. It's been bred out of them.
It's only mildly more palatable than being dehorned.
Well, and I learned this on my farm, when I had my own farm, not on my dad's, but I noticed that I was buying animals for milk. I had goats, and there was a distinct difference in the animals that I bought that did not have horns and the ones that I raised and left the horns on. And this happened by accident because one year I had I had a lot of animals and I didn't have any help, and I just didn't have time to dehorn them because it's easier they call it disbudding, so they make it sound better than it is. I just didn't do it, and I said, screw it. This year I'm just going to leave all the horns on the little ones, and I'm going to see what happens. What happened was my animals were healthier. They required less maintenance. They were more intuitive, as in instinctual, to their natural ways of life. They were a little rowdier. They were more protective, if you want to call that rowdy. They did not just allow anybody to come into the pasture, because they will meet you, the ones with the horns, that is. So the horns actually are a connection to the instincts. And when the horns were taken off, they were docile. They required more maintenance because they were not as healthy. They were actually dumber to the point that they wouldn't get out of the way when the tractor was moving around the yard. Well, the goats with the horns were definitely out of the way. They were wanting to be around people more rather than goats when you took the horns off the goats. We can see a correlation here with the population today of the young people that have this dehorning or castration going on, because you do the same thing with the male animals that you did not want to be breeding. You castrated them, and then you could let them in with everybody else and they won't be breeding. They were more docile. Well, they were not any healthier, that's for sure. But they acted like one of the girls.
Well, this was the foundation of the entire concept of the eunuch. I mean,
Exactly. Okay, I'm glad you said that.
why is it such a hard, I mean, granted, I didn't grow up on a farm, but, why is it a hard stretch to believe we have a cellular memory? We're born with an instinct, and instinctively, that cow or that goat cannot run down to Bob's gun shop and arm himself up when he finds himself lacking horns. I mean,
you did grow up on a farm, though. You grew up in Brooklyn.
That's not a farm.
Yes, it is. It's just a different kind of animal that was being farmed.
Oh,
I call
nicely served, man.
I call it more of a zoo.
Oh, okay. Well, a constructed. Okay, so one man's zoo, another man's farm. Tomato.
And if you want to get it right, I grew up in the Bronx. I did not grow up in Brooklyn.
Uh-oh.
Oh, whoops! I didn't mean. Okay, whoops! I'll retract the Brooklyn statement then. Okay.
You
Heck, you
better.
can rumble in the Bronx, man.
No, but we see the opposite of it now. I mean, there's an expression in my business that says buying a gun doesn't make you a soldier any more than buying a guitar makes you a musician. The opposite works here too. There are two responses to, we'll call it any form of emasculation, if you will. Emasculation is a gender-specific term, but I'm talking about any time that your innate defense mechanisms have been removed from you. And let's face it, as human beings, we only have one weapon. Another saying is either you are the weapon and the gun is a tool, or the gun is the weapon and you're the tool. Okay? That's the way it works. Really, as a species, we don't have a natural weapon other than our brain. Maybe if you work at it, your fingernails, but that's basically about it. So, it makes perfect sense that whenever you alter nature to the point where, what is our natural weapon? Our endocrine system, adrenaline, our enteric nervous system. That has been our only weapon as a species for survival. Will, you spoke about the mother's connection with the child. Women, generally speaking, are emotional, they're passive, they're docile, they're submissive, they're all kinds of things until you mess with the cub. Okay? Then hell hath no fury. Okay? And that is a 100% natural, instinctual defense mechanism. There's no way that you can remove that from somebody and not have their behavior be altered to that point.
Except in today's world, when people are conditioned to accept all this stuff that happens to them. I know people that have their children messed with, and the mom shrugs her shoulders. Oh, well. We have a problem today. It has devolved into this.
I'm going to use my phrase that Patrick Jordan loves that I overuse so much. Cognitive dissonance. Okay. Yes, I agree. We've been conditioned that this is acceptable. We've been conditioned that this is the way. We've been conditioned that this is whatever you want to call it. Okay? We've been chemically altered. We've been genetically altered. We've been biologically altered. But the fact remains, if you look inside and really look inside, just like when I put on a tie, there's some part of you based on what you are. I'm not even going to say who you are. Based on what you are, there is a part of you that repels this, is repulsed by it, and revolts from it. And, Patrick, you like to talk about your switches, okay? That's the switch I want to find, okay? Because that's that big two-fisted, red-handled motherfucker that Frankenstein had his hands wrapped around just before he did the ha-ha-ha-ha-ha laugh. That's the switch I want to flip.
Yeah.
In everybody.
Yeah.
That's the switch that needs to be switched back on, because it has definitely been switched off. And it's been nailed and bolted and and glued, so it can't be turned on very easily.
Well, that's the reason why I brought up the genetic difference between animals with horns and without horns, because then the next logical question would be, from your experience, can a polled, P-O-L-L-E-D, can a polled animal still show the kind of aggression that was demonstrated on your pickup truck by the other animals? Now, did those other animals have horns when you were pulling the babies out of the swamps?
Oh, some of them did, yeah. And it seems to be that when in the herd, when you had some with horns and some without horns, the ones with the horns were much more independent, and there was always a few without horns around them, kind of like a groupies.
Oh,
That's
wow.
what I was just going to ask you. Obviously, the ones with horns are going to manifest a distinctly different behavior. How many of the ones without horns followed along?
It was a minority. It wasn't the bulk of them without horns. There was always some that just, they were the ones that always stayed by the feed bunk or next to the waterers. They never went out of line. They always stayed up close to the feed bunks. It was the ones with the horns, or the ones that stuck with the ones with the horns that didn't have any horns, that were jumping the fence and going out into the swamp.
Oh,
And
you know
so,
what they say.
the reason I bring that up is because Bob says he wants to find that rebellion switch. And I'm just wondering if it's still genetically there to be able to be thrown. Because they've had 6,000 years plus of manipulation of the human genome to create the kept animals that human beings have been bred to be. So is that switch still there to be thrown, is my question.
I have to call you on vocabulary.
Oh.
The rebellion switch?
Okay.
Rebellion?
Repel.
Instinct. Instinct switch.
I like it. I like all three of them. So go ahead and elaborate now, Dr. No, why you brought that up, because I find that's a very interesting topic.
Well, we could do a whole another 2-hour show easily on this topic. To rebel, to be a rebel, okay, is to acknowledge that this shithole is the status quo naturally, normally. Okay, we may live in it. It may be all around us. It may have been successfully perpetrated upon us, but to repulse this system is hardly to rebel. To repulse this system is the ultimate act of non-rebellion. The rebellion was detaching ourselves, or allowing ourselves to be detached from what is naturally right for each of us independently and conforming to this. That was the freaking rebellion.
Oh wow! Oh, you're playing opposite day with the word.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's reverse day here, Patrick. Hopefully you're catching that.
Wow! Yeah. See, this is what that cognitive dissonance is all about. When you are given a word and you are given the definition, people don't look beyond it. And so you just called me out on the use of a word that was given to us. And I used it in that context. But you're reframing it that the actual rebellion was us going against our nature. And that's what got us in the shithole in the first place.
And calling anyone that repulses this system a rebel is in fact merely reinforcing the, for lack of a better expression, correctness or appropriateness that the Matrix wants to perpetrate upon us. To say that someone is a rebel or an anarchist against this says more about the authority and appropriateness of the system than it does about the personality of the individual who is repulsed by it.
Very nice. Yeah, this is one of those episodes where people are going to have to listen to this a couple times to make sure they got it.
I would hope so, because there's some meat in here.
Yep. Patrick's balls.
On to Barbie.
Some Rocket Mountain oysters.
Hey, don't laugh, man. I've ate my 5-gallon pail full of those things. Nothing went to waste on our farms.
That's why I have dogs. No, but you know, when we start talking about this stuff, you know, once again, it's a matter of perspective. I mean, this all started out talking about tattoos and piercings and all that stuff. Okay. Obviously, one of the three of us has tattoos. I'm not going to mention who, like I said earlier. But I happen to know for a fact that that person that got those tattoos went through their own process and did not get them until a specific point very late in their life. And it had absolutely nothing to do with treating myself as a canvas. Okay? And once again, if you look at the meme that's put on, it's, you know, a canvas. What's a canvas? A canvas is a piece of cloth that's been stretched over a frame, tied down, and it exists to be decorated with someone else's vision. Okay? Is that what you want in life? Okay? If you want to equate it to something else, equate it to, and I forget who said it, but the famous sculptor who said that he has never sculpted anything. All he did is see something in a piece of rock and chip away the excess until what was inside came out. Okay?
Michelangelo would stare at a block of marble for days until he saw what he needed to liberate.
Oh, I like that word, liberate. That goes again with the origins of the tattoo. You know, it was the shaman putting the pattern on the individual to liberate the aspects of the higher self that were identified through their first ritual, their initiation.
I've got a serious question to ask you guys. Can comets be considered animals? Because I want them, like, emblazoned on my chest. Is that my secret spirit guide?
It doesn't. It doesn't specifically need to be an animal.
It says Prey, pray for comets.
We know you're really not that terminal.
Hey, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah,
No.
were you talking?
I was blathering away here, and I had kicked me off of Skype, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah, we didn't. We were just making fun of me. We weren't listening to you at all.
I couldn't hear you, so I'm like, wow, okay, well, I'm back.
I found my spirit guide. I'm going to have comets tattooed on my chest.
We could just
Go ahead, Will. You wanted to weave the energy flow or whatever with the whole concept of your animal rearing.
Well, there's another concept here of the tattoo that actually goes into what you do to claim ownership to an animal is you burn your insignia into the hide. You mark them to declare that you own that animal. So that's just another concept we haven't talked much about, and here we have like 8 minutes left of the show. I can't believe almost 2 hours is gone already.
Didn't realize
that. One of the other things, you had made a comment about, and this was a while, it was probably a year ago, but I remembered it in my brain and when I saw the email from Eddie about the metals and the minerals that they put to make jewelry and the different places jewelry is worn. Have I triggered a thought that brought you back to that conversation at all? Patrick?
Well, I think you might be referring to an old show where we're talking about the semiconductor properties of diamond.
Yeah,
embedded in gold, which is a conductor.
Yeah.
And then just on the body, and that it makes a circuit.
Right. It's like, to me, it's like a dead short. It's like it's an antenna that actually allows your energy to have it be dead. If you understand electricity, like a dead short in your car, where your lights are flickering, or you push the automatic door lock and the radio turns off or something like that. It's stray voltage. It's basically grounding out or siphoning off your life force somewhere else. And you're not getting a benefit from it.
I would call that like running a jumper circuit from point A to point B, which, if we go all the way back to the first hour of the show, when Bob was talking about Bruce Lipton saying that the cell membrane is a printed circuit, and then bringing up transhumanism, all they're doing is they're inflicting an artificial circuit on the circuit that's already there. And so even when we look at jewelry, which, we're talking minerals, crystals, embedded in metal as conductors, being placed strategically on the body. The heart chakra for a pendant or a necklace, the meridians on the wrist for a bracelet or a watch, the triple warmer meridian on the ring finger. These things were thought out. They were strategic. They were planned, and they're putting circuits on there, and those circuits are then like they're like parasites. They're like running a jumper from one part of the normal way to whatever they want to control.
And you know what actually strikes me as pretty funny is these people who are into crystals, these people that are into minerals, these people that are into, it could even be something like acupuncture. You get into the situation of, okay, you believe all this stuff works, but you have no problem with putting rings on your fingers, on your toes, with stones on them, when on the other side of the coin you profess that these stones have some sort of magical power.
So what is that? The cognizant dissident at action there in play.
I like that. I'm writing that down. Cognitive dissident.
As opposed to cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, so you get the idea, right?
So you were on the concept of scarification. So an animal is branded. That's scarifying. Many black men in gangs were actually branding themselves as part of the gang initiation. It happens all over Africa and other countries. Embedding things under the skin, just scarifying by creating a welt and scar tissue is a form of decoration used in other tribes in Africa. All these things actually mark you within a gang, a tribe, a whatever. It's a form of identity, and I have never understood why you would want to do something like that permanently as opposed to just body paint or henna.
I think it has to do with the growth of the ego past just sheer survival. It comes down to pecking order, because we live in we live in a world that is totally not natural. Every animal on the planet has, in nature now, I'm talking natural, in their natural lifestyle, has a type of pecking order. The only animal that does not anymore is the bipeds. It is synthetic. We live in a world that is not natural. It is synthetic, and society's been engineered that way.
Hey man, we pay to live here. It don't get more bizarre than that.
Yeah, right. I'm with you there.
Talk about no pecking order.
As long as you pay, you can peck. All right, so we got like 1 minute left. I'd like to say thank you for listening to our show tonight. And we'll be back on Wednesday. And my website is bodyelectrician.com. And so now I will give the stage to Patrick.
Why, thank you. My website is vaccinefraud.com for all of your bull nose ring needs.
Dr. No?
I don't have a website because I really don't think anybody's interested in what the fuck I have to say. But if you want to email me and tell me how not interested you are, it's drgnostic@yahoo.com, dr_gnostic@yahoo.com.
And if you have topics like we talked about today, which was inspired by Eddie, thank you, Eddie, send us the emails, get a hold of us, and we'll gladly hash them out like we did tonight. And there you go, Dave. It is 58, and we have completed our show on time. Thank you, Dave. And don't forget, everyone, that this is a listener-sponsored network, and you heard Dave at the beginning of the show. Please hit the donate button and contribute a little bit. Please.
This is Dave from the Wolfden Studio saying welcome to Wolf Spirit Radio. Wolf Spirit Radio is totally listener supported by folks like you who choose to help us stay on the air and grow.